All right, so welcome back. So we're going to be jumping into 5.1. We just finished chapter 1. I know we're skipping ahead a bit, but there's a reason for my madness. So let's take a look at decimals. Decimals are pretty mild leap going from integers to decimals. So let's just see how that works. Now, the one thing to keep in mind is that the general definition for a decimal is based off of fractions, which we haven't done yet. We're going to do those in the next unit, which is chapter 4. But as far as how they're developed, it's a fairly logical step. So I think we can just kind of assume a little bit. So in this case, if we wanted to get the decimal version of 7 out of 10, we would just divide on our calculator. 7 divided by 10, which is 0.7. 89 out of 100, divide those and you get 0.89. So we can get the decimal value and see that it's part of a whole number, which is what we got right up here. So decimals are just ways of representing parts of a whole number. Now, the one important thing to keep in mind is that decimals have place values, just like the integers did, just like the whole numbers did, so do decimals. So let's take a look at how that looks. So if we draw our place value chart again, get a bunch of spaces here. Now let's put a decimal point right there. So we've already seen the left side of the decimal point, which the first place value was the ones, and then the tens, and then it went on off to the left forever. On the right side, it's very similar, but it's a subtle difference in a couple subtle differences from what it looks like on the left. Now, the first place value to the right, you would say, well, maybe it's like the ones. So we got a ones type of spot. Well, we actually don't. It actually skips that first one and jumps right to the tens. But instead of saying tens, to differentiate it from what's on the left side, we're going to add THS to the end of it. So tenths. There's a little th at the end of it. So, but after that, it's exactly the same. So the next one after the tenths should be the hundredths, and then the thousands, and then the 10,000s, and the 100,000s, and then what's after the 100,000s? Yeah, millions. Millions. So again, don't forget that THS. That's important just to differentiate it from what's on the left side of the decimal point. All right, so let's try a few problems. So these ones just want you to identify the digit in the place value. So again, as long as you have that in your mind, what those place values are, where they're located, you should be fine. So the tenths, remember, is the first place to the right. So that would be the 4. The hundredths is the second one, so that should be the 8. Okay. Thousands. So thousands. So ones, tenths, or excuse me, tenths, hundredths, thousands. So thousands is the third. So that's going to be the 1. And then millions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the 6th one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's the 2. Not much to it, right? Now this next one, we want to just write it in the proper order. It's basically a jumbled up number, and they want you to put it in the right order, all the digits in the right spots. So the first thing you have to realize or have to figure out is which digit goes first. What's the furthest one to the left in my number here? So yeah, this one here doesn't have us on the end of it. So that's got to be on the left side of the decimal point, and there's nothing else that's even further left, so that's your starter. So we should get a 6 point, and if you want to cross them off, that's not a bad idea. So which one goes next? Tenths, remember, is the first one to the right. So 5 goes there, and then, hundredths. Hundredths goes next, so that's going to be the 4. And then, well, the thousands has to go, and then the 2 is last. So that would be your number. So again, as long as you're careful with those place values, it's not a bad problem. The next one is a little bit deceiving because it's talking about fractions, which we don't know much about yet, except what you've learned in the past. But now they want you to change these decimals back into a fraction. Now it's actually a very easy process as long as you're counting the number of decimal places that are occupied. So in this case, there's 2 decimal places occupied. So if we want to change it to a fraction, you take that number part and put it on top, no decimal point. And then because there's 2 of them, we need 2 zeros in the bottom with the 1 in front of it. So 64 over 100. Now, we're not going to get into reducing and stuff like that, but if the homework on My Math Lab asks you to reduce, you're going to have to try. Now, it's not too terrible, and let me show you how we can do it. The biggest thing you want to look for first is some small numbers that divide evenly into both the top and the bottom. So in this case, because they're both even, you could divide out of 2. So if we wanted to divide out of 2 first, we could. And let's see what we get. 64 divided by 2 is 32. 100 divided by 2 is 50. But they're both even again, so we can divide another 2 out. So if we divide by 2 again, that's going to give you 16 over 25. And that's as far down as it goes. Hopefully the problems that I've selected, you don't have to worry about this, but you're going to have to double check just to make sure. All right, what about something like this? Well, you still do the same thing. That whole number part you want to put on top. But then what do we put on the bottom? How many zeros? Yeah, 4. So 1 with 4 zeros. Now, this one's a little trickier to see if you got to reduce it or not, but it's not even on the top. So chances are you're not going to have a lot of luck finding anything. So I would leave that alone. Now, what happens when you have a number on the left and the right? Well, the number on the left, you really can't put that into a fraction per se. So that you're just going to leave it alone. So you're just going to say that's 100. And now the decimal part, you do write as a fraction. So now there's a 0 here, and then there's the 1, 1. So you really don't need to worry about the 0. So 11 is going to go on top. But now how many zeros do we want on the bottom? You've got to account for all of them. So you will need 3 zeros on the bottom. So that should be your answer. 111 thousandths for that one. Okay, so far so good. Let's take a look at the next page, which is just one more example, but it's writing it in words. Now, here we got to be a little bit careful. Remember before where we said not to use the word and when we're talking about whole numbers. And is reserved for decimals. So specifically, it separates the left side from the right side of the decimal point. So now in the first case, though, we don't really have a number on the left side, so we don't got to worry about using the word and. All we need to do is just properly describe this decimal side, and that's it. And it's a 2-step process. The first step is just to write the number, that 105, properly in words. So what is that number? It's 105, no ands. So start with writing that. But now, you don't need a period. But now, all you have to do to finish it is to describe or to identify the place value that the last digit occupies. So what place value is that 5 in? Tens, hundreds, thousands. Thousandths. So that's the finishing touch that you have to put onto your answer. So 105 thousandths. That puts it on the decimal side. Not bad, right? Let's try one with a number on both sides. So we can say the number on the left, which is 12. But now we want to separate it from what's on the right. So here's where we use the word and. So 12 and what? How would you say that decimal properly? 4. And it's going to have to be the second spot, which is the hundredths place value. So 12 and 4 hundredths would be the proper way to say it. Now you're probably saying, why on earth are we doing this? I'm never going to use this stuff. I'm glad you asked, because you actually use this when you write checks or you fill out money orders. There's technically a special way you're supposed to fill that out when you write it out the dollar amount. So if this was $12.04, we would say, okay, you got your little box where you have the 1204, you have who it's to, and then you have the amount, and then they say dollars over here, you know, on the line. Well, on that line is where you write it properly in words. So technically you should write something like this. 12 and can be represented with the word and, or you could use, you know, an ampersand, or you could use a funky plus sign type of thing. That's what I do on my checks. But then the last part of it is to write this change as a fraction. So usually you would put 4 over 100, and then you kind of put a line just to show there's nothing left after that. So, but that's where you actually see this stuff a little bit. So there's the fraction part of it and the word part of it, which is kind of cool. So, all right, let's jump to the last one. So left side, that's a 5. And then what's the right side? 4 place values, but the number piece is just 428. So we can write 428. But now what's the last place value? So tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10 thousandths. So 10 thousandths. All right. So you got to be a little bit careful with this stuff. Place values, again, are very important. And we're going to need place value knowledge again once we get to rounding, so which is coming up soon. So, all right, so we'll stop here and we'll see you in the next video for the next section. Stay tuned.